Now I had to move a few bits and pieces to even be able to see poor old bullet truck, and not to mention what I've got to take off the tray. Been using it as a hoarder storage type setup, but I'm hoping it doesn't give me too much grief and it starts easily. We're going to get it out and we're going to do a mod that I've been wanting to do for a while now. What could possibly go wrong? We're going to try and get the rear to work a lot better. We're still going to have leaf springs. So all the people that are saying coil it over, do coils, it's not going to happen. And why? Because in my opinion, leaf springs are cool. It's alive! So a Team Bullet follower from up in Mackay kindly sent these down. He wasn't using them anymore. So there's a few measurements we need to take. So these are the 200s, and what this is going to be is realistically 100 heights. How much height are we going to lose taking the 200s off? So in front of the tire, 1145, 65 mil there to the rubber. Now I'm expecting that to drop because I'm not going to have as much height here, so I'm not going to be pushing that spring off the chassis as much. The shaft of the shock, I've got 80 mil. And you can see there by the clean spot that I really can only afford to go up 25 mil before I start to lose up travel from my shock. But unfortunately, I think these are off an IFS Hilux. A, my bolt's not going to be long enough, and B, I'm going to have to space it out for the test. Now Bullet's actually going to Brian's house for a little excursion. We're actually going to cut this front mount off, and we're going to relocate it about 100 mil further forward so we can then run the N80 spring. So before we get confused about all these different springs, I'm going to do a little drawing. SAF is solid axle front. So all the Hiluxes with leaf spring fronts, the rear springs are the same. So they sit with the center pin. So that's that hole there that holds the bolt that sits on your diff housing. From the center to the front, it's 530 mil. Center to the rear, which is your shackle, 680. Roughs means rears up front. So what we've done on Bullet Truck is put the rears in the front. So that's the spring that we use on the front of Bullet Truck. This is a spare main leaf that I have, and it's for the front of Bullet. So it is 530 from this point to the center of the bolt, and then 680 from this point to the center of the bolt on that. So that's the front, but we're not talking about the front, but just so you can understand the measurements, that's what they mean. Now the springs that we have at the moment in the back of Bullet are IFS rears. So these are any independent front suspension Hilux that has leaf spring rear. From the center point forward, we have 560 mil. So you can see that it is 30 mil longer. Now where we got the extra flex by using the IFS rears is this point to that point. It's 740 mil, so it's 60 mil longer. So it's a longer leaf, which means it's flatter and it will bend more. The only issue with the front of the IFS rears is that they have a 40 mil eye, so you have to sort your bushes out there or custom make something. Now the camber we have at the moment on Bullet Truck is 180 mil, so that's where that measurement is. It's the curve of the spring. Now the option that we're going for is the N80 option. Now it's a longer leaf overall, but where we need to do the mods is this front half is 700. So that center pin on the N80 spring is dead center. We need to move that front mount. Where we are here, we need to move that front mount forward. The decision I need to make is whether I go the 70 mil lift or the 40 mil lift. Now they're both a light duty spring, so they're 150 kilo constant. The camber of 120 millimeters as opposed to 150. Now I've chosen the heavier one, the one that's 70 mil lift, and it still has less camber than the ones that we've got here now. So I guess first job to do, get a jack in here to hold it up, and then we'll put the drop shackle in. So the bolt's out, and the reason I've got that jack where it is, I've got this bit of timber So it's stopping the head of the jack wanting to go in and collapse the spring, and at the top I'm using the perch to stop it coming this way. So it is quite safe. So there's my issue with this being a solid axle front chassis. The IFS rear mount at the top must be wider. So you can see how the camber of the spring has changed because we're not an extended shackle anymore. The extended 200 really flattens that spring out. Height wise, I don't think we've lost much because what we've taken away with the shackle, we've gotten back with the camber of the spring. No forklift, simulated something that's gonna give us a look at how these shackles may or may not work. So you can see that the leaf springs haven't started to separate yet. It's all in the shackle. So we'll go back to the diagram and we'll see that the N80 spring I'm going to use is actually shorter from that center pin to that point there. So that'll help out a little bit. This is 740 from the center to that edge. So that's where we've been mucking around with that drop shackle at the moment. It would have been nice if we had this point further towards the cab so that we would have had the shackle sitting a little bit better. Now what we get with that N80 is 40 mil decrease in length. So that's going to suit that shackle angle. The way that I'm showing this example, I'm actually not able to pick that wheel up, so we actually don't know where the maximum's going to be. We might do set up a high lifty here and then take that away and see if the wheel comes off the ground. So I believe that high lift jack is now taking the weight of the truck because I've backed this right off. So we got nothing pushing it down and the tire's still on the ground. Plan B, a bit safer and away from the neighbour's car, but I've stuck this in the back of the chassis, so it's all now on the high lifty. But I'd like that to open right up. That's the whole idea of it, but I don't think it will because the camber of the spring is too much. That wheel's still on the ground. Okay, it's just off now, so I don't know if it's any better. But what we can do is we can compare it before I put the shackle on that side. And now that's not tight, so we're not going to get any more even if I undid that. So the N80 spring, with those measurements I showed you on that drawing, this front part of the spring is going to be over here. So while that back one's loose, this front one's quite tight. So maybe worth putting a taller one of them in, but I just noticed that top wrap bar rod, that looks bent to me. It's like we're forcing. So this wrap bar's been in for a long time, even back before we did the IFS rears and the 80 series housing. So maybe that's not set up properly anymore. So we've got 160, a bit over 160. We have a gap of 200, that's an easy one to remember. If we were to have the standard extended shackle on, look how much further away it is. It must be better. So this side with the solid shackle still, take those two measurements. So that's only 180. So this will be less. That's at 155. So it definitely separated more with that shackle. But I just don't think that this leaf pack is going to do them justice. Now the ones that we've got here now, when we took the extended solid shackle off, the curve really appeared. So what I'm hoping is the less camber, and then we've got the longer spring, so we should flatten out a bit more. And this shackle angle should be more like it's designed to be, rather than trying to come back like that, because we're too long here at that point. Interestingly enough, with the solid shackle, we get separation here and that's tight. Whereas with the drop shackle, this pack stayed together, that stayed loose. So they're behaving differently with the solid pushing to that one where it's opening up the shackle. Concerns about that top wrap bar rod there. Oh my goodness. Could this have been limiting us? I didn't even look at that to see when we put it up, was this taut? It shouldn't have been. All right, attempt 2. And you can see, working by yourself, how you can miss things. As I'm going up, that winch is pulling. So that's gone taut. I reckon that's what stopped it keeping on going. All right, let's back that winch off. So we've got it to the point where it's picking up again. Oh, now we're talking. Now it's doing what it's supposed to do. Is that on the ground? No, it's off. Comparison, it was 200 before, wasn't it? Look at that, 260, 250. And the shock is at 200. So I don't know now if that's the shock limiting me. No, it shouldn't be. There's 200 in the shaft. So it's just the spring now. But wait a minute, now that's tight. Look at the separation there. That's more flex, that is. Is that still on the ground? It's still on the ground. All right, it's off now. So I don't really like the separation here. I'd love to simulate up travel on these shackles the way I've got them set up. Winch this in to the full length of what I need. And then I know. So that's it there, that's... that cable can just stay out like that. It'll be fine, not going to hit anything. If we are doing some crazy hill climb, we just put the pin back through there and that acts as a solid shackle again. It won't open up. Once that goes through there, it physically, with that plate there, it physically won't let it open. It runs as a solid shackle. I want to try and simulate some up travel in one of these back tyres. So I'm going to pick up this front one, and the opposite should be the springs flattening out. So that tyre's just off the ground. The rear spring's working there. You can't really tell. They have flattened out. That bump stop is a lot closer. The only way to be able to accurately test it is to actually go off-road. I think potentially that suck down's been holding my droop up for a while now, since we fitted it. I've never had the rope that slack before. Like choosing spring ratings at the best of times is hard. Whether I go a 30 kilo front or a 40, how heavy's my winch, how heavy's my bar. But on a comp truck, it's trial and error. There's no page on anyone's suspension book for a leaf sprung Hilux on 40s with 80 series diffs. It's trial and error. You just hope there's not too many errors, because each trial costs money and time. Every time this truck spends a night out, it rains. Doesn't matter whether we're in a heat wave or not. The night I put it out, that day it rains. So we'll do what we can to see if we can get it on the trailer. So these are the few bits and pieces I feel I'll need to be able to actually take it off-road. But I'll spin it round so the bum's undercover so I don't get wet. So a couple of washers and bolts later. Just peace of mind tomorrow for when I'm on the track, that I'm not thinking about bolts coming undone at the nut because the thread wasn't long enough. Maybe not as neat as Bud's spaces, but there's spaces nonetheless. Now it's time to check the heights before we put it on the trailer. So that there is 1155. So that's telling me that I've actually gained 10 mil. I'm higher. So by taking the shackle off, I don't understand how that's happened, but the curvature of the spring may have something to do with that. Let's check the other two. Now between the bump stop and the flip plate, I have 70 mil. So it was only 60 earlier. And then the shaft on the shock is 85, where it was 80 before. The other really valuable thing that you can do when you're doing this kind of a mod, so we can see here we're in line with the front hub. So this front diff's been pushed forward by the rears up front. But by modifying all these mounts at the back, we can actually change the wheelbase of this thing. Now Adam feels that it probably should be a couple of inches shorter. So by moving that mount up there and potentially that rear one, we can push this rear diff forward. But I'm really happy with the length. I feel it's real stable when I'm climbing stuff, as opposed to pre-IFS rears. And that shaft's been cut down to suit the dual cases and the rear disconnect. The wrap bar, I think we've modified that already once too. But that bend's a worry. We're gonna have to do something about that bend. So I feel I'm not gonna really gain anything personally by changing it. This mount coming forward to suit that 700, the rear, leave it where it is, leave the diff where it is. That's my opinion. I'm happy with the wheelbase. When we're hitting stuff like these tires at Woodpecker, I really feel that it did it easy. Having the front dig and the hydro assist, it steers really nice now. I'm sure Brian and I will discuss all this when it gets to his house. And also too, there's talk that they want to straighten these shocks up a little bit. So now the wheelbase that we're running at the moment is around the 2950, which makes it a limousine of crawlers at 118 inches. So Adam's talking around the 112 inch would be ideal for us at 2800. So that's coming forward about 6 inches. One of our YouTube followers suggested we put an Anderson plug on the TJM compressor. Genius. Having the Anderson plug outlet up the back of the cruiser, it's perfect. I don't have to stretch the hose anymore when I'm airing up the caravan, or in this case, the car trailer. This tyre seems to continually go down, but I'm not alligator clipping the compressor to anything that's already hooked up on the positive of the battery. Cheers, Richard. It's close to the airbags, and I'm always adjusting those up and down. But what we'll do, we'll duck off in the bush on our way to Brian's tomorrow and just have a little drive, nothing too serious. So we'll have some footage from that little run. I'll have the drop off at Brian's. Hopefully my springs will be ready and I can pick them up on the way as well, because they're all in the same area. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I didn't confuse you with all these different springs, etc. But stay tuned, we'll have plenty more on the Bullet's back end. And as always, thanks for watching.